And we're live. All right, Greg.
Good morning. Welcome to today's community briefing. Today is the 7th of August in 2025, and we are glad you all are here. My name is Gregory Sneed, and CEO and owner of Lifesaver Financial Services. I help my clients keep more of the money they make, and I do that through life protection, asset protection, wealth building, financial literacy education, and I'm a financial coach. So now it's my joy and privilege. Ooh, August. We got to come up with a new name. Okay, so August. So every month we try to come up with a new name for our queen of the community briefing. I can't come up with one right now.
This is Black History Month, so Black Business Month. So there you go. That you should be able to get something out of that.
I was I thought Black History Month was February,
Not
but
not History Month, Business Month. August is Black Business
Black Business Month or Black Business Month.
Business.
Business. Okay, business. All right. So the queen of Black Business Month, Crystal Mitchell.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm excited, man. I don't know if I've ever met a female anthropologist that's definitely Black, and I love it. And so we should have a great conversation today. My name is Crystal Mitchell. I am the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, as well as a business coach and consultant. I work with youth and adults to help them structure their businesses and hopefully guide them to having successful businesses. I am the inspiration behind the community briefing. It was an inspiration during the pandemic to make sure that we had a resource that was ours, that gave us information that we could use in real time, delivered by the stakeholders and leaders in our community. And so this platform is here now, 5 years later, to introduce you to those of us, people that look like us, that are actually sitting at tables where decisions are being made about us. And so we are introducing you to them so that you can expand and reach out. And this platform is for us to connect and unite and to build our power in unity. And so that's the purpose of this place. We are powered and supported by Recycling Black Dollars and the BBA, and we're monetarily sponsored by the Los Angeles LDC, Southern California Edison, SoCal Gas, PCR, Wells Fargo Bank, Urban Excellence, and I think that's it. And anyone else that wants to contribute, we are happy to have you. We have a powerful team here, again, brought together to bring unity to our community. You've already met Mr. Greg Sneed and Mr. Joe, the Stephen Turner. He's our producer. Couldn't do this without you, Stephen. And Miss Robin Billups. Miss Robin Billups is not with us today, and then myself. And with that, we're going to turn it right back over to Greg so he can introduce our wonderful guests and we can get our conversation started. Welcome to all of the new names that I see, and I hope you guys come back. And for our regulars, thank you guys for returning each week. You bring such value to the community briefing, and we thank you for that. All right, Greg, back to you.
Right on, right on. So thank you for joining us, Joseph. You almost got a promotion there, huh? You're part of the team. So you certainly are a regular viewer, and we're glad to have you and all of you who are returning, and some of you who may be new. Thank you so much. Today, our guest is Dr. Rachel Laryea. Did I say it right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. And she is representing a number of things. I didn't find a thorough bio on you. I do have some stuff from LinkedIn, and but it looks like you are doing a number of things. You're anthropology, but also a asset wealth manager with JP Morgan Chase. And so you've been doing that for about 3 years. Also, she has a company called Kelewele. Did I say that right?
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
Kelewele, and it's a cultural lifestyle brand which is reimagining plantains. Okay, or plantains or plantanos. All right. She's the author. She has written some books, and one of the books that she has written is on Black capitalists, and it's a blueprint for what is possible. So I looks like we didn't get a chance to find out where she lives or where she from. So hopefully she will share that with us. On the profile here, I'm seeing Brooklyn. Are you in Brooklyn
I'm
or
in
from Brooklyn?
I'm in Brooklyn.
You're in Brooklyn? Okay.
hmm
But not from
hmm
Brooklyn.
No, not from Brooklyn.
Okay. So where are you from?
So I was born in Northern Virginia, but I'm actually a dual citizen in Ghana, where my family is from. So both of my parents were born and raised in Ghana. And my mom, she immigrated to the States in the 80s, had me and my brother here. And so I've gone back and forth. But yeah, I grew up in the DMV area and then moved to New York City for college and stayed ever since. And so feel like a New Yorker. I've got over a decade now, where I've been in Brooklyn, but yeah, it's a new home for me.
Yeah. What part of Brooklyn?
I'm in Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy, do or die. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage Dr. Rachel Laryea.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. It's my understanding I can kind of just present and then we'll do a Q&A afterwards. Is that right?
Yeah, let's give you permission to share.
Oh, I'm actually just going to just speak. So I
Oh,
won't
I
be
thought you had
sharing
a.
screen.
I thought you said presentation, so I was.
Oh, yeah. I just meant in terms of sharing at this kind of juncture. And yeah, maybe I'll start with my bio a little bit for everybody on the call. Thank you for having me. It's really such a pleasure to have Stephen. Special shout out to you, Stephen, for reaching out and wanting to be in conversation with you all. And I think there's just so much alignment in terms of the work that I do and the work that you're doing at the community briefing. So I appreciate it. But you mentioned my involvement in finance. So I work at JP Morgan Chase. And I've actually been in my current role in asset wealth management as a researcher for about a year and a half, but I've been at the firm for over 3 years. My first role at the firm was actually in racial equity investment strategy. So back in 2020, JP Morgan Chase came out with a $30 billion racial equity commitment after the murder of George Floyd. And that work was really made with the imperative to attempt to do its part in closing the racial wealth gap. And so $30 billion was the allotted amount given across different lines of businesses, whether it be business banking, home lending, the consumer bank, towards solving the racial wealth gap. And the work that I did was really around strategic deployment of those funds. And so I did that for the first portion of my tenure at the firm before transitioning into the wealth space, where now, as a researcher, I build mental models for how high net worth and affluent clients or prospective clients think about wealth and investing. And we use those mental models as a way to then create and refine our products, whether it be self directed investing, as well as our suite of financial advisor services. And so that's a little bit of the work that I do in my 9 to 5. But I'm also the founder of Kello, which Greg mentioned before. And so that is a lifestyle brand that I started back in 2018, really based off of what I call my plantain love story. So my family being from Ghana, West Africa, we eat a lot of plantains. And Kelowele, long before is actually the name of my business. It's the name of a popular plantain street food, where it's basically you take ripe plantains, you dice them up, you coat them in spices, namely ginger, and you fry it to golden perfection. And it is the most delicious thing. And my mom would make it for me growing up as a kid, and I loved it. That fast forward to when I was actually in college at NYU, I transitioned into a plant-based diet and I was also a student on a budget. And plantains became a go-to because, well, back then you could get like four for $1. They've gotten more expensive nowadays. But so they became kind of my go-to. And then fast forward again, when I went to graduate school and, started studying anthropology, and we anthropologists are always really interested in the question of culture. How is culture created, sustained, and how does it relate to kind of our identities that we create on the individual and also the communal level? And I kind of had this light bulb moment of really thinking about food as a kind of medium to tell stories about culture. And I love the fact that I can be West African and I eat a lot of plantains. Someone can be from the Caribbean and they eat a lot of plantain. Someone can be from Latin America and they're eating a lot of plátanos, right? And so I love that as a point of cultural connection. And so started the business in 2018, really focused on creating plant-based, plantain-based options because I saw that, when I'd go to the grocery store, go to the vegan aisle, nothing was culturally relevant for me. And so it was really about how can we take our kind of staple foods and food systems and put them in a kind of mainstream context within an American context. So started by doing that and, did festivals and pop-ups. It was very grassroots to start. And then built up to have a brick and mortar location in downtown Brooklyn. And then also was able to be the first vegan Black woman owned vendor at the Barclay Center, also based in Brooklyn. And so was able to do that before I transitioned to a job and a career back in finance now at JP Morgan. But yeah, that's really kind of shaped my entrepreneurial journey. Now that business, we still continue it by doing wholesale and e-commerce. But more recently, we also kind of expanded that business to hospitality and real estate. And so earlier this year, we were able to acquire a beach lodge in a beautiful island called Mafia Island in Tanzania, just off the coast of Tanzania. And you might think Mafia Island, ooh, I don't know. But the beautiful thing is that actually in Swahili, Mafia means a peaceful dwelling place. And so I really wanted to think about how we can have these unique food cultural experiences rooted back on the African continent and it be Black owned and really think about the end-to-end supply chain for those experiences. And so we've built that out in East Africa and then also building out similar experiences in Ghana, where my family is from. And so we've expanded that business. And then so I've kind of tracked my professional career, my entrepreneurial career, and then the last one that I'll speak to that'll lead into the book, and I think why I'm here is my academic experience. And so when I was an undergrad, I studied social and cultural analysis, which was really a degree in critical thinking at the end of the day with an interdisciplinary approach to how you think about social problems through the lens of history, sociology, anthropology, etc. And so that was my framing. And while I was trained up in that discipline, a lot of it was informed by critical race theory, racial capitalism, and how we kind of collectively within the Black studies space have thought about Black lived experiences in relationship to capitalism and the economy today. And so that was my training. I didn't think that I would pursue a career in finance, but I was recruited while I was an undergrad to work at Goldman Sachs and went through that process, ultimately stayed, got the internship, and then stayed full time. And it was in that experience that I got really the first exposure I ever had to how Black professionals were both critical of an economic system, which is capitalism, while still use the tools of it to their benefit and really in service of social good. And it kind of, if I'm honest, challenged so much of the training that I got in my undergrad that told kind of reductive or very kind of linear stories about how we as Black people can use the tools of capitalism in service of our kind of financial security and thriving. And so I wanted to go back to school and really build out a pragmatic theory for this work and what I was seeing and how people were living their lives. And so I started my double doctorate program in anthropology in Africa. Oh, Greg, I see you went off mute. Did you want to jump in?
I was about to say, and what school did you go to? A school nobody's ever heard of, right?
Yeah. So I went to a little place called Yale, and I did my double doctorate in African American studies and anthropology. And so going into that program, I anticipated that I would have some challenges, but specifically within the anthropology department. Why did I think this? I thought that because the discipline of anthropology is really rooted in structural and systemic racism. And that's the case because if you don't know much about the discipline, it's really birthed from a lot of white male scholars, quote unquote scholars, who would go to these quote unquote primitive parts of the world where they would go study quote unquote savage people and write quote unquote knowledge about these people. And so you see all of the problematics in that. And so much of that history is still alive today in the kind of work that is respected and kind of uplifted within the discipline. And it was the case where I actually never took any anthropology classes in undergrad. So why did I even go get a PhD in it? It was because my favorite undergrad professors were anthropologists. And they were Black anthropologists, and they were shifting the narrative about what it means to be an anthropologist, how you can do this work, how you can use the tools of anthropology to tell meaningful and productive stories for our communities. And so that became why I even decided to pursue a PhD in it. But I didn't actually have any challenges when I came to anthropology. My greatest challenge came when I was in my African American Studies department. And that was because, if you remember, I went to Goldman. I got really excited about telling the story about how Black people really have a kind of nuanced and complicated relationship to the economy and how we participate in it. But I found that within a Black studies space, where so many Black studies departments all over the country are rooted and built out of resistance movements, because so often the case, these kinds of departments are not just inherently funded by the institution and seen as worthy disciplines like history or English or some of your other departments. And so for me to come along and want to build a research study about Black capitalists and telling stories about how we can think differently about our agency and our potential within the economic system was largely unwelcome. And I'll tell you a story that kind of crystallizes the point. 2 years into my program, I was responsible for giving a prospectus, which was basically just an overview of what my research would be, to the Black Studies Department, which ironically enough is located on Wall Street in New Haven, Connecticut. And so I give my presentation, and at the end of it, to an audience of other PhD students, faculty, and staff, one of my colleagues, she raises her hand and she says, Black capitalists don't exist. At best, they can be financiers, but they can't be capitalists. And I understood why she was making that statement, though I didn't agree with it, because it's hard to imagine oneself on the winning side of something when you've been on the losing side of it for so long. When you've been the laborer within the labor or capitalist position within capitalism, and have never been able systematically or structurally able to benefit from your intergenerational labor that you've built to create what is Western capitalism, to identify economically as a capitalist creates this kind of identity crisis for some, which is why that comment, Black capitalists don't exist, became her critique of my work. But I think it was in that very moment that I became very convinced of the urgency and the necessity of this work, because it was kind of heartbreaking to see a fellow Black scholar at a place like Yale University placing a limitation on what Black life could be, and then also be in a position to promulgate and continue to share that limitation and call it knowledge production to, the next generation of scholars. And I think for me, what really gave me the courage and tenacity to pursue this work was because it was rooted in evidence. It wasn't just theories in my brain. It was literally seeing how people do this every single day and how people really think about what it means to be a Black capitalist as I define it, which is really anchored on how we can reposition ourselves within the economic system in order to achieve social good. Because capitalism as we know it today is predicated on profitability and private ownership. It doesn't make space for a communal mindset or social good, though you might see those things as byproducts in certain cases. But for me to really write a story, which really kind of the byproduct for that was the book that I wrote and published just last month called Black Capitalists, A Blueprint for What is Possible. It's about how you center community, how you center an abundance mindset within the here and now. It's the case, people will say we want to dismantle capitalism. Some people are socialists or anti-capitalists, whatever your economic identity is. But the reality is that capitalism takes up the vast amount of real estate within our lives today. And as we can imagine and dream up new possibilities for the future, pragmatically, it's important to meet the moment that we're in. And it should be the case that our critiques of capitalism should raise the standard by how we behave and participate within it today. And so my book is really a framework for how we do that in the here and now, again, as we're getting to a new place in the future for where we want to go. And so that was really the genesis of this work. And I've now been in the throes of book touring and really sharing this work because at the end of the day, my biggest hope for this work is unified action. I think for so long within the Black community, we have hit a stalemate when it comes to debating how we think about capitalism. Our economic identities become kind of a non-starter to how you can be both critical of a system while still use the tools of it in service of your community. And that kind of stalemate has disallowed us, I think, in many ways from getting at unified action that's going to create communal and collective economic security. And so that's really the hope for this work is how do we get on the same page about the tools of capitalism and how they can be in service of us while still acknowledging that capitalism today is rooted in extraction, exploitation, and predicated on violence. So I'll pause there. Happy to take questions, but just wanted to give you an overview of how I arrived at this work and really the call to action for this work that I do.
Thank you. There was a couple of powerful statements there, and I will certainly want to go back to this recording and play that again because a couple of points that you made that were extremely powerful, but it really spoke about how when you look at anthropology, there's a number of different subdivisions of it. There's the cultural and the archaeological. We think about Jurassic Park, well, that's going way back, but it's interesting when you look at the capitalism because black folk we became the capital, human capital that was used, and a lot of that human capital was sourced from Ghana. So that whole process of it. So share with us a little bit about how it has to sort of flip from being victims of the capitalistic society to being able to take advantage of it. Is
Yeah,
that's part of where you're going with it? Yeah.
yeah. And so, I mentioned one of my first roles here at the firm was really focused on how do we solve for the racial wealth gap. And I think what's really interesting about the racial wealth gap and the economic landscape that we live in today is that it's fraught with contradictions. In the case that we have more Black millionaires in this country today than we've ever had before. We also know that Black wealth is outpacing white wealth, but yet we still have this ever enduring racial wealth gap. We're also living in a time where financial literacy and access to financial acumen is becoming more and more democratized. We also live in a world in which technology, AI, and the kind of unruliness and the lack of regulation around AI can become opportunity for kind of redistribution of capital and access to wealth. We're also living in a time where intergenerational wealth building is first and foremost and top of mind for so many Black communities and how people are thinking about creating economic security for themselves. So you have this focus on it. And then you also have the reality that when you look at reports from, say, the World Economic Forum or longevity economies, all of the reports and the research is showing that Africa is quite literally the future. I think we've been saying that for some time, But if you look at in the next 20 to 50 years, what continent, what regions of the world are going to have the greatest populations of working people, you see that Africa is really quite literally the future. And so, as the world turns its gaze to the African continent, and namely countries like Ghana, which has had a long and enduring history, taking from Kwame Nkrumah and his focus on Pan Africanism and really that kind of diasporic points of connection, and now living in this time where more and more people are looking to repatriate, reverse brain drain, go home, invest in Africa, and not just Black folks, but bigger kind of racial demographics. And you've seen how even China has been a key player within the Ghanaian context, especially. There is a focus there. And so, how do we unpack all of these kind of contradictions? But it just really kind of doubles down on the urgency of this moment and how we have to really rethink our positionality within capitalism. I talked about the key kind of positions within a capitalist economy. You have your laborers and you have your capitalists. For a long time, Black people have been very familiar with the labor position. As to your point, Greg, we were the capital, we were the greatest commodity, and continue to be when you look at, a capitalist system that's really driven by consumers first and foremost. And within, when you think about our orientation as Black people to the capitalist system, historically, we have occupied the consumer position. But that is changing for some of the reasons I mentioned before, as access to capital and wealth is becoming more accessible. There are still challenges, make no mistake of that, but the aperture is widening. And so I think we're in a pivotal point to really rethink how we engage with capitalism because of it. And so this work is really situated in both beliefs and behaviors. From a beliefs perspective, I think this is, again, from when I put my scholarly hat on, this is where I depart from, say, kind of Afro-pessimism or even certain teachings when it comes to racial capitalism. That predicates that to be a person of color, to be a Black person within a capitalist system means that you are on the losing side of capitalism. That has been the case. Surely the tools of capitalism have been racialized, and we've seen the ways in which economic trauma has been apparent in so many of our lived experiences. But that is not the end of the story, and it doesn't have to be. If we're in a position to believe that in community there's possibility to actually achieve economic security, and that's quite literally the only way to doing it. But it starts first with our set of beliefs. We know that capitalism today nurtures an individualistic mindset. It nurtures scarcity mindset. And so those things are counter to what's the potential when it comes to Black capitalism and the framework that I offer in the book about it. And so if we can start first with our set of beliefs about what's possible, how we achieve what's possible, then we get to activate new behaviors and how we actually achieve that kind of financial security and wealth building that we want to at the communal level. But it really requires this shift. And I think we're in a very special moment that we have to really take hold of the moment in order to realize the potential of it.
Can capitalism embrace the three classes of people? Because capitalism started with you had those who were the poor. There's a term that trying to come up with, but Europe had mostly an elite that was royalty, and you really couldn't break into that unless you married into it. With capitalism, anyone's able to take advantage of the system. And so where does that translate in terms of maintaining capitalism? Some people think that the Democratic Party is advocating for socialism. Um, 50 years ago, the Black community was trying to position a revolution as though we were going to take over the
Mhm,
country. So
mhm.
how do we embrace the capitalism but then maintain our social preservation?
Yeah. That's where community makes the difference and having a communal orientation, which is the key departure from how we think about capitalism. And I would just, because I do think words are important, rather than embracing capitalism, it's about knowing the strategy. It's about knowing how the system works at a very fundamental level as a way to then use the tools to create new outcomes. I'll give you an example. In the book, I write about a man named Wamimu Abbey, the co-founder of a company called Isusu. And that business, and he's a Nigerian-born man who immigrated to this country with his mother. And when you talk to him, he'll tell you a story about why he even created the business. Because his mother, when they came to this country, they had no access to credit and had little to no money. And his mother had to sell her wedding ring in order to gain the capital that they needed to pay their bills. And he said no one should have to experience that. And so Isusu today is a company that focuses on creating financial visibility for the country's most financially invisible people through credit building. How do you do that? It's through rent reporting of payments as a way to indicate credit worthiness and building one's credit. We know that within Black and Brown communities, the majority of people are renters. And so you look at that problem that it creates when you're renting and say not able to build credit, you're always kind of outside of the margins of capital opportunity and capital allocation. But if you can build a business that meets that gap and say, if you pay your rent on time, which we know that you do, that should be an indication for your credit worthiness, which translates into being financially visible, which then translates into you being able to access capital and leverage in a good sense to then create new potential economic futures for you. And so he's used the tools of capitalism in the sense credit, debt, understanding B2B models, B2B business to business or business to consumer models in order to now within 4 years build a unicorn business. A unicorn business being a business valued at $1 billion or more. And so it's just one example of how when you focus on culture, you focus on community and collective economic security, you're able to achieve profitability while still through the means of private ownership. Is it an embrace of capitalism? You could argue that. I would say it's more about understanding the strategy, understanding what's profitable, and what still allows you to achieve that kind of communal outcome through the means of how it is you build your business. And that's just one example in a kind of entrepreneurial sense, but there are other ways in which you can do it, even if you are, say, operating more from a consumer perspective, or if you're a corporate professional, et cetera. There are different ways in which you can really activate these tools based on a really solid understanding of capital flows in order to create these new economic outcomes that I speak of.
So it's capitalism as a tool as opposed to a philosophy or a
Correct.
religion, so to speak. Because
Correct.
some people believe it. Well, everybody will believe it. Some people see money as a religion. They worship it. They may not call it that, but it is a worship of the money or the things that money can buy. It's a worship of a Rolls Royce or a $50 million mansion or a 300-foot super yacht. That's a form of worship. So you're saying using it, take advantage of it, use it as a tool as opposed to embracing it. Is that what I'm
Exactly.
hearing? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It's really about strategy and implementation of that strategy and tactics.
And so, in what format, other than your wonderful book, of course, but in what format, how does that knowledge passed along? How does that talked about? And then we do also want you to take some moments and highlight your book. And what was the significance of June 10? Is it June 10? Is that the published date?
Yes, exactly. That's when it was published by Penguin Random House, Crown Imprint. And remind me again your question.
But that's also the foundation of my company was June 10. It's my mother's birthday.
Oh, look at
So
that.
it's a
It's a lucky
special,
day.
yeah, that's when I formed my own company 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you
So
asked around different distribution channels. And so
yes,
I'll
yeah.
say, this book took me 10 years to write, if I'm honest, because 2015 is actually when I got my start at Goldman Sachs, and that's when I really began this journey of really thinking about the intersection of race, money, capitalism. Though it's been something that, really shaped my childhood for sure, but since 2015. And so the book is, I like to say, the front door, but there's a big house, if you will, for this work. And right now I've been collecting interviews with people I identify as Black capitalists or people who practice Black capitalism, again, through the ethos and the definition provided in the book. And so a podcast is forthcoming soon, and there are other kind of media elements that I'm thinking about for future kind of dissemination of this work that is, accessible to a wide range of audiences. In addition to me also just, having opportunities like this to kind of share the story and the call to action for everybody as well.
Yeah, Stephen, I see your hand. I'm gonna get to you just a couple seconds. Is there a black anthropologist that you view as like put him on a pinnacle or a pedestal, or that you
Oh,
really admire, or maybe there's several. It may have to be one.
yeah. Yeah. I think that, when I was in my Anthro 101 classes, there's always the Black poster child, unfortunately. But I think still she was a guiding light for me, Zora Neale Hurston. Many people don't know that she was an anthropologist. And Mules and Men was a book that was on our syllabus. It kind of got positioned as, okay, here's your one Black scholar that you can kind of have to reference to, but just reading her work and knowing of her as an anthropologist was huge for me because, again, to be in those classes and you're reading this work of white men who are calling Africans primitive and savage, her work was just a reprieve. It was a breath of fresh air and a reminder of what could be possible. And the fact that she was thinking about that then and challenging really kind of set the standard for how I think about how anthropology can be different. And again, how just like I say, the contradictions of what it means to be a Black capitalist and how you can use these tools, though complicated and nuanced, she was doing the same thing within the discipline of anthropology. And so there's Zora Neale Hurston. And then I would say a contemporary scholar that I really adore is Michael Ralph. He actually has been someone who has shaped so much of my own intellectual thought. Um, he was my thesis advisor back when I was at NYU and was even part of my dissertation committee in grad school. So that spans many, many years. And he's just been an incredible thought partner. And the work that he has done, Forensics of Capital, is one of his books, an excellent book, really tracking just that, how you can think about the tools of capitalism, both the vestiges and its impact within an African context and also within the African diaspora as well. And so his work is just pivotal in how you can think about doing anthropological work well, but then also telling our stories from a place of agency and empowerment as well. So those would be
Cool,
my two favorites.
Stephen, and then Crystal, over to you. You muted,
You're muted.
Stephen. Yeah.
Dr. Laryea. Am I pronouncing it right? Pronunciation?
Laryea, almost.
Laryea.
Yeah,
When we first last saw each other at the gathering spot in Atlanta with Ryan Wilson, who's also been a guest on the show, you're also having an event at the gathering spot in LA on the 25th. Is
that's
that correct? Can you tell
correct.
us a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. And thank you for bringing it up. I will be at the gathering spot on August 25th, 6:30. And what's actually really exciting is I'll be in conversation for that fireside chat with Wemimu Abbey, who I mentioned, the co-founder of Isusu. So it'll be a special opportunity to be in conversation with him as someone who really shaped the book and someone whose life I followed for years and how he's really thought about social good at the nexus of, Black identity and capitalism as well. And as I've been on this book tour, it's been so important for me to, connect with Black communities at Black owned establishments and really showcase and uplift Black owned bookstores as well. I think that you really have to be so intentional at every part of the infrastructure when you build this to really model what Black capitalism looks like, not just in theory, but really in practice.
And for those who have not been to the gathering spot in LA, it's off, where is it off of?
Pico and
Yeah,
Hauser.
a nice
Pico and
facility.
Hauser.
It's free of charge, but please RSVP. Alan
Okay.
Perry could probably relate to this. Again, I have your book. One example in the book that you mentioned is a Black couple in the Bay Area that they had to hire a white, what was it? They
Yeah,
have to
I
get
could
a
tell
little
this.
appraisal. They have to list a white friend to pose as homeowners to get their value. And Alan
Mm-hmm.
had a situation like that for his own home. Can you tell a little about that
Wow.
example? And Alan, can you
Yeah.
tell about what you did?
Yeah. And so, we talk about, again, you got to know the strategy and what are the tactics to fight at the structural level, systemic inequality. It was the case that this Black couple owned a home. They were looking to get a kind of refinance loan. So they got the home appraised and it was appraised for about $500,000. They knew that that was low, but they also knew that the appraisal gave the, appraisal estimate that they did. And so they kind of felt like, well, what else can we do? And because we know like the institution of appraisals have what has largely been structurally unjust and racist, they had their white friends front as the homeowners for this home. They brought back an appraisal, and the home, as you can imagine, appraised for almost $500,000 above the original appraisal. And so for us, when we think about what's the so what of that, it's like there has to be kind of creativity, innovation, and a solid understanding of how the capitalistic system that we are part of operates in order to create solutions that combat that, to get the outcomes that we're wanting. Because if they did not take those actions, they know their home wouldn't have appraised for what it was actually valued and worth. And so it's all the ways in which, again, like how do we use the tools of the system to create new outcomes for ourselves? And that I think Story really does an exceptional job of kind of making that known.
Awesome. Wow, I am just so impressed, Dr. Laryea. There have been a number of books I've read over the years about Black success and Black wealth. Dennis Kimbrough has one, and a number of other individuals out there, Black Fortunes, and where they talk about the first Black millionaires in America after slavery or right outside of slavery. And so I've been impressed, and I share that with my students. First of all, do you know Dr. George Fraser?
No, I'm not familiar with Dr.
Okay.
George Fraser.
I am going to make an introduction to you,
Okay.
to him. He actually does one of the largest Black conferences, networking conferences in the country. It's going to be in November in Houston. And he brings in speakers, and there's some billionaires that operate in that space. But there are a number of individuals, and this is his platform, how to create that Black wealth in our community. What do we need to do as Black people? And he's pretty hardcore on the things that we're not doing that is preventing that. So I'm going to make that introduction to you because I think
thank you.
as far as getting your message out there, he brings about 1,500 people to that conference every year. And he's been doing it for the last 20, I think it's at 30 years now.
Oh,
And
wow. Thank you.
so I think that would be a great introduction for you. So with what's going on in America today, is that possible? Is it possible, excuse me, for us to create that equity in the capitalism and the here in America? I mean, white folks are pretty specific right now about what they feel and what they feel our place is here. They're speaking it very loudly. And or is it that we should be focusing on creating our wealth outside of this country, because Africa is that next spot, is that spot. I've been hearing that, and I know that they're actually campaigning to create states within the continent of Africa so people can travel just like they do here in the United States. So is that possible here, or should we should be looking elsewhere and outside of where we are?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say I don't think it's a either or. First, it is possible to do it here, but I think what's more important is to acknowledge the connectivity between and within the diaspora. So it's not just about, okay, do we focus in an American context or do we focus on an African context? It's really about acknowledging that there have always been points of connectivity. And so at the individual level, if someone says, America is home for me still, it's like, how do you build communal frameworks that promote private ownership and profitability amongst us and within the Black community? Because as you kind of point to, within the sociopolitical moment that we're in, the cavalry is not coming. It's really up to us in order to create the solutions that we need. And the only way that's going to happen is through community. And for someone also like myself, who I had a very Ghanaian upbringing in America. And so there's always that duality, that kind of hyphenated experience of being an African American that I'm always thinking about. So while my feet are here, my mind is in Ghana most of the time. And so I'm always thinking about just like the global reach of how we do this kind of communal economic security making, that really aims to transcend borders, but really think broadly about, regardless of where we are as Black people, and we're everywhere, it's like, how do we build the infrastructure, starting first around private ownership, that allows us to really dictate the terms and not be beholden to others who decide for us how we're going to live our lives and how the outcomes of the systems that we interact with every single day. And so that's how I would really kind of frame the thinking around what's possible. Yes, it is possible, but also really, when the question becomes location, it has to be kind of global in mindset to achieve it.
Yeah, I am the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, which is an organization been in the community for um, 30 plus, 35 years, 34 years right now. Muhammad Nazaruddin, who was the founder, it was all about us using and spending our dollars within our own community to empower our communities. And that's 30 something years later, we're still trying to do that. And our dollars only staying in our communities for 6 hours in comparison to all of the other ethnicities that live here. And then bridging a gap between the Afro-Caribbean population, the African population that lives here as well. It's like we're all separated, but if we all came together, that would be a whole other thing. And I know there are external forces that prevent that from happening, but we have to figure out how to communicate to each other that we have to ignore that and come together just with the numbers that are here in this country by itself, and then still have a reach in their own country.
Yes, there's power in numbers. When actually I was at the gathering spot in Atlanta a few weeks ago, as part of my book tour, a woman came up to me. She told me this story that I think really crystallizes your point. She was saying she was, at a park, and she saw these two Black boys playing, and they were arguing with each other. And one of them was saying, "Oh, you've got a funny accent. You're Nigerian." And then the other one said to the other, he's like, "Oh, no, you have a funny accent. You're Jamaican." And then this white boy comes with his mom and he says, "Look, mom, it's niggers." And I felt like, wow, that really crystallizes the heart of the issue. The intra-racial challenges that we have amongst each other. And I think we're seeing it really play out now, where people are saying, oh, well, you have the children of African immigrants coming in this country. You've got Caribbean immigrants who are coming in this country. They're achieving success, or the perception is they're achieving success and outpacing Black Americans. And like, that's creating a rupture as well. And so that becomes a distraction and a point of tension. But meanwhile, there's always the white gaze. There's always the ways in which they say, oh, they will destruct themselves and they will occupy themselves because they're creating separation amongst themselves. And we have to pull out of that. We have to pull out of that. But again, as I was saying, it starts with beliefs to then create these new set of behaviors that we actually want to materialize.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's definitely got to be intentional. I'm working with a number of women organizations here because we obviously have to have a plan. And so we're going to be getting together at the end of the month to come up with a plan. Women, we have our children have to live, and not that men's children are here as well, but we gave birth to them. And so we have that kinship with our children. And, leaving this place as it is today, if we were to leave, how could we leave us? How could we leave our children here on this planet when they don't have the tools that our ancestors had, even that our parents had or our great grandparents, to fight what we're fighting with right now? And so I think it behooves all of us to have a very intentional, deliberate plan. If nothing else, teach our children how to rise above and how to fight through this and how to survive through this. We didn't want to expose them to it, but they're being exposed every single day. So we have to give them the armor and the ammunition of what to fight with. And so I do believe it's our young people that's going to really make this change. Yourself, that generation under us, because some of our older generation a little apathetic on this space because they've already done what they needed to do and they just want to coast it out. But for me, leaving this planet like this for our kids is just not acceptable for me. So I feel there's so much more work to do, and I commend you on what you're doing. You're a young voice, and that's what we need to hear. That young voice to get to our young people so they read the structure how they think right now, because they think the wealth is, the flashy jewelry and the so forth that they get in the rap game. But when you really look at it and the limitations that we have even in those spaces, because we don't own those spaces. We have to be a Tyler Perry in all of our spaces. Sherilyn, I'm going to turn it over to you. You had a question.
Yes. So with the racial equity, the $30 million, what type of programs were funded through that racial equity investment at JP Morgan?
Yes. Yeah, I would say some of the most notable ones, again, because it was across different verticals, whether it be the home lending business, the business banking business, or even the consumer bank. So within home lending, they came out with first-time home buyers assistant grants. And those were, at the time, $5,000 that could be attributed to the cost of buying a new home if you were buying a home in a predominantly Black or Brown community. And so that was aimed to support, again, we know like one of the big contributors of intergenerational wealth is owning a home. And so if you can further incentivize folks because of that kind of economic support to do that or alleviate some of the pressures to doing that, that could aim to, again, diminish the racial wealth gap. On the business banking side, we came out with the special purpose credit program. And so it's often the case, or historically, someone goes for a business loan, they might get rejected. They don't know why they've gotten rejected. And so the aim of that work was to limit the kind of set of requirements that would allow someone to get a loan. And so we were able to change that. It's the case, JP Morgan Chase, being the largest bank in the world, is a very conservative bank at the end of the day in terms of how it even thinks about loan distribution, because it's really not in the business of taking risk, especially taking risk on folks within Black and Brown communities that historically they have not, done business in. And so that work was really an effort, and we've seen a lot of kind of capital distribution and deployment through that work. And so those are some of the key examples that I'll speak to. But across even, say, the commercial bank, the work that they were doing in affordable housing and where they were investing, and creating affordable housing projects are some of the ways in which that $30 billion got deployed and continues to. That commitment was a 5-year commitment, which will reach gestation this year. But the work does continue. It's my understanding. It might not be called racial equity because it's the case here at the firm. We no longer use the term equity. It's been changed to opportunity. So instead of like a diversity, equity, inclusion program, we call it diversity, opportunity, and inclusion. And so you see the ways in which this work is getting rinsed to meet the kind of political moment that we're in. But in certain ways, the work still continues.
Oh, awesome. Renee? Miss Renee, are you
Yeah,
there?
I'm here. You know me, I had to get off
I
mute.
know.
So anyway, thank you for coming. I love your background. We have some similarities here in places that we've lived. I was in Crown Heights for elementary through junior high, first year of high school. But anyway, what prompted me to say something were two things. I work in the tax savings business for commercial building owners and people with short and long-term residential properties to help them. And I don't specialize, but I focus on Black people because most people I talk to don't even know what we do. And we do specialty taxes. I mean, complex taxes that usual CPAs, it's not in their ballpark. So that's what we do. Another thing that you said that you have this, I love plantains, by the way. You have this property over in Tanzania. I'm on a project in Tanzania too. And part of our business helps you accelerate and depreciate cost segregation issues in foreign countries. And we don't know about this. So it's been a delight listening to you, hearing about your book. And are you going to the underground bookstore in Sacramento?
Not yet, but
Put
if
that
there's
on your list.
yeah, okay.
They are fantastic. And
Okay.
anyway, underground
Awesome.
books in Sacramento. But thank you
Underground
so
books.
much for coming and allowing us to share our limited knowledge with your vast and double
Oh no.
doctorate degrees. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Oh,
I've
thank you so
actually
much.
just bought the book just now,
Thank
so I
you.
can read that. Stephen, we need to introduce her to what's the doctor over at USC that did The Color of Money. She was one of our first guests.
Oh,
Do you know her?
Badardon? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I cite her
yeah.
in my book. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
excellent.
she's actually was one of our first guests, I believe, on the
Wow.
community briefing. And so you guys need to talk. She's got that book and she has another one as well. But she's researched the redlining and all of the strategies and tactics to keep us from acquiring wealth. So maybe Stephen, you can make that intro.
Yes, I can.
That would be awesome. How would you? I teach kids how to become entrepreneurs. I've been doing it for like 14 years. And so every summer we spend, I do 2 months helping them create businesses. And then in the winter months, we actually help them get those businesses launched. What would be your messaging to them that I could pass on? Because, you know, as I said, I think it needs to start. They need to be cognizant, one, of what's going on, but empowered so that they can move forward to create their wealth.
I would say, and a great book around entrepreneurship is The E-Myth. And it's really all about how, you know, having an idea or having passion about something isn't enough. You really need to understand the financials and the economics of running a business. And so really understanding, you know, your cost of goods, you know, P&L sheet, an income statement, like that needs to be foundational in order to build upon that in a way that's going to be successful or profitable. Because I think, you know, so often the case, I'll hear stories about, say, Sally, she has this excellent apple pie. Everyone's, oh, you got to start a business. She's got to start selling these apple pies. But she doesn't know the cost of goods. She doesn't know her profit margins. You know, she gets into a lease agreement for a brick and mortar location. She's struggling with overhead. She's struggling with employees, payroll, all of the nitty gritty, like inner workings. Like those are the things you've got to get down pat in order to build a profitable business. And the reality is that entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, but there's a role to play within Black businesses, regardless of if you're the entrepreneur or if you're playing a role within that. There's always a role to play. And so I think those are the core things that I always try to impart on folks, that it is, because I think we've romanticized entrepreneurship in a lot of ways, but you're really in the trenches, most of the
Yeah.
time. And so it's really being, eyes wide open about what that experience really means, and really understanding what it takes to be successful, especially if there's limited access to capital to starting that business, and what are the lean startup models that you can implement to really prove and pressure test that you're onto something that you should continue to invest time, money, and effort into. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, my background is finance, and so accounting and bookkeeping and so forth. I just had
Yeah.
that conversation. I had to teach a class last night on um, creating a big win for in this tariff environment, and we were talking about business owners preparing themselves to be contract ready. As like, but before y'all can even get there, you got to be able to know, you got to be able to produce a balance sheet and a P&L, and y'all not there. So we need to start there first,
right,
and work our way up to that. But that was our whole conversation last night. We did a 6-week series on how to function in this environment. For I'm a consultant for the Los Angeles Urban League.
We have time for one more question, and then we got to.
Yeah.
Alan, you want to wrap up? Last question.
You're muted.
Muted. Okay, great. Can you hear me? I appreciate everybody, and thank you so much for the presentation. You guys hit up on something that we run across all the time. I'm a mortgage lender, and not just residential, but a lot of commercial and investment properties. And so often we end up having to take clients to hard money lenders, private money, to get the loans done. We get them done, but certainly not at terms where if they were more bankable, it would happen a lot smoother. And um, Crystal and Dr. Laryea, you both hit upon something, and that's something as simple as financial statements. So often we have successful businesses that are making profits, doing well, but we don't have the financial record keeping that supports that. We're not even filing our taxes on time every year. So when you sit down and you try to go to a City First Bank or any bank and say, I'd like a loan, the first thing they're going to ask for are your financials. And if you don't have them, it doesn't matter how great of a business you have and how profitable of a business or the property you're trying to acquire. None of that matters if you've not made yourself bankable by having the correct financial records. So then if you're in my situation, then you end up taking that client instead of to a bank or instead of to some of our normal lenders, we end up going private money at rates that you shouldn't have to pay. So that needs to be just hammered and hammered and hammered into our entrepreneurs that, you're doing great running your businesses, acquiring property, doing the things you need to do. Take a step back and get a Crystal involved in your enterprise to get your financials together. And that way you can be bankable. Sorry for the lecture. Thank you.
No, it's needed. Dr. Laryea, thank you so much. We are so happy that you come anytime. Everyone go over and they can get your book off of Amazon, or do you have a website? How do you prefer to be purchased?
So my website is rachellaryea.com. You can follow my Substack there. Books are available anywhere you buy books, but please, if you can, get them from a Black-owned bookstore. Baldwin & Co. is an excellent Black-owned bookstore that you can get them. But yeah, I really appreciate the support and the time. It's been a pleasure to speak with all of you today.
Awesome. And then for those of us, you're going to be at the gathering spot on the 26th.
Yes, would love to see y'all there.
Okay, I'll see. Put it on look it on my calendar and get it on my calendar. It's been a pleasure. I knew I was going to. I was excited when I heard you were an anthropologist. I spent a lot of time in Egypt, and so that's huge over there, and the history and so forth. So, but thank you for sharing with us. We are very pleased.
Thank you.
And please come back.
Thank you.
And,
for sure.
Thank you.
let us know how
Definitely
we
come
can.
back and join us. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stephen, for organizing.
Next year, we'll make a couple of introductions to you that can help push your book out there, and I will send you over the information for the Power Network conference.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Who's our guest next week? Stephen. Is he listening to me?
Our next week's guest is Kevin Ross Jr. of Creation Safety. He's going to talk about, in the Black History Month, about safety, OSHA, and other factors, in the aftermath of the altitude fires and other disasters that we inflicted on us. So Kevin Ross Jr. next week.
All right. Thank you. Is Sarah still on?
Gone.
No.
Okay. So Sarah is having next on the 16th. There is the Black Business Day Expo, which is going to be at LA Trade Tech. So that's Saturday, August 16th, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. and in the Culinary and Arts Building at LACC's campus. The flyer is in the chat, so go over and register and support Miss Sarah. I'm going to be there to help Miss Karen Blackwell introduce a new product that she has on financial wellness and as well as entrepreneurship mindset. And she's going to be delivering it to families. So I'm going to be helping her out. We want to thank you guys for joining us. Hello, Joseph. And all of you for coming out. Please continue to share with your networks. This is the place to be every Thursday at 11 a.m. We're introducing you to people that are really making a difference. And for those of you that don't remember, yesterday I got an email from someone. Yesterday they're calling it the Chair Day. August 5th was the day that big rumble took place on the Mississippi River with everybody. So it has become a day to celebrate the empowerment of us fighting back. And there's obviously all of that on the internet today. But please be safe out there, guys. And we will see you back here next Thursday at 11 a.m. And support during this Black Business Month. Please support a Black business, several of them actually. Let's see if we can outbalance it. More Black, less white. How about that? There we go. And we will see you guys all next week. And I'm going to stop the recording.